In the quiet darkness of space, something extraordinary was about to happen. Earth had always felt alone in the vast universe, a tiny blue dot surrounded by endless stars. But that feeling of solitude ended one crisp morning when ships unlike anything humanity had ever seen descended from the heavens. Sleek and silver, they glided silently through the atmosphere, their surfaces shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. These ships didn't belong to Earth. They belonged to someone, or something else. People around the world stopped what they were doing to stare at the skies. In New York, crowds gathered in Times Square, pointing upward as one of the massive ships hovered above the towering skyscrapers. In Tokyo, office workers pressed their faces against windows, watching in awe as another ship loomed over the city's neon lights. Even in small towns and remote villages, people stepped outside, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. No one knew why these ships had come or what they wanted. For now, all anyone could do was wait. Alex Carter was one of those who watched the spectacle unfold. A young astrophysicist working at NASA, Alex had spent years studying the stars, searching for signs of life beyond Earth. He never imagined he'd live to see the day when aliens would visit his home planet. Standing on the rooftop of his apartment building in Houston, Texas, Alex adjusted the telescope he had hastily set up. Through its lens, he studied the closest ship, marveling at its design. It looked nothing like the clunky, boxy spacecraft humans had built. This was elegance and precision on a scale he couldn't comprehend. Then, without warning, the ships began broadcasting a message. The voice that came through speakers worldwide was calm and measured, speaking perfect English. "We are the Galactic Council," it said. "We represent a coalition of advanced civilizations spanning the stars. After observing your species for many years, we have determined that you are not ready to join our community." The words sent a chill through Alex's spine. Not ready? What did that mean? The voice continued, explaining that humanity's violent history, reckless use of resources, and destruction of its own environment made it unfit to participate in galactic affairs. "You will be given 1 year to prove otherwise," the message concluded. "Fail, and we will take action to ensure the survival of the galaxy." Across the globe, reactions varied. Some people were terrified, convinced this was the beginning of an alien invasion. Others felt ashamed, believing the Council's assessment might be true. Still, there were those who bristled at the idea of being judged by outsiders. Among them was Laura Bennett, a journalist covering the event for a major news network. She stood in the middle of a bustling crowd in Washington, D.C., microphone in hand, asking strangers for their thoughts. "Who are they to tell us what to do?" One man shouted angrily. "They don't know us." Back in Houston, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The Council's arrival seemed too sudden, their judgment too final. He wondered if there was more to their story than they were letting on. As the day turned to night, and the ships remained in place, casting long shadows over cities and towns, Alex decided to dig deeper. If the Galactic Council thought humanity was weak, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The days following the Galactic Council's announcement were chaotic. The world was divided, and emotions ran high. Some people believed the aliens' judgment was fair, pointing to humanity's long history of war, pollution, and greed. Others saw the Council's words as an insult, a slap in the face to everything humans had achieved. Protests erupted in cities around the globe. In Paris, thousands marched through the streets holding signs that read, "We deserve a chance." In Moscow, angry crowds burned effigies of alien ships. Meanwhile, governments held emergency meetings, trying to figure out how to respond to the ultimatum. Laura Bennett was in the middle of it all, reporting live from different locations for her news network. Her job was to capture the mood of the planet, and she did it well. She interviewed scientists, politicians, and ordinary people, asking them what they thought about the Council's demands. One night, while filming in New York City, she spoke with a young mother named Maria, who clutched her toddler tightly as she talked. "I don't care what they say," Maria said, her voice trembling. "They can't just come here and tell us we're not good enough. We're doing the best we can." But not everyone shared Maria's defiance. In London, Laura met an elderly man named George, who shook his head sadly. "Maybe they're right," he said. "Look at what we've done to this planet. Maybe it's time we listen to someone else for once." Laura nodded, jotting down notes. She knew the debate wasn't going to be simple. Humanity was complicated, full of contradictions, and the Council's ultimatum had only made those contradictions more obvious. At NASA, Alex Carter was working late into the night, poring over data collected from the alien ships. He had teamed up with a group of fellow scientists to study the technology the Council used. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, efficient, precise, and far beyond human understanding. Alex was particularly fascinated by the energy signature of the ships. It didn't match any known power source on Earth. "If we could figure out how their engines work," he told his colleague Sarah, "we might stand a chance if things go south." Things were already starting to go south. Tensions between nations were rising. Some countries accused others of dragging their feet when it came to meeting the Council's demands. The United States and China exchanged heated words during a global summit, each blaming the other for failing to take the situation seriously. Smaller nations felt powerless, caught in the middle of a geopolitical storm they didn't create. Meanwhile, underground movements began to form. Groups of hackers, engineers, and even former soldiers started meeting in secret, discussing ways to resist the Council's authority. One evening, after a long day of research, Alex received a call from Laura. She wanted to interview him about his work. Reluctantly, he agreed, knowing that the public needed to understand the gravity of the situation. During the interview, Laura asked him directly, "Do you think we can meet their demands?" Alex hesitated before answering. "Honestly, I don't know," he admitted. "Their conditions are extreme. Dismantling every weapon of mass destruction and reversing climate change in just 1 year. It's almost impossible." Laura nodded, sensing the weight of his words. As the camera crew packed up, she asked Alex one last question. "What happens if we fail?" Alex stared at her for a moment, then looked out the window at the glowing lights of the city below. "I don't think anyone knows for sure," he said quietly. "But if we do nothing, we'll definitely lose." The clock was ticking, and the world was running out of time. While some prepared to follow the Council's orders, others quietly began planning for a fight. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: humanity wasn't going down without a struggle. As the days turned into weeks, the Galactic Council's ultimatum weighed heavily on humanity. The message was clear: dismantle all weapons of mass destruction, reverse climate change, and prove Earth's worthiness within 1 year or face annihilation. Governments scrambled to respond, holding endless meetings and drafting plans that seemed impossible to execute. Scientists, engineers, and environmentalists worked around the clock, trying to find solutions, but progress was slow and frustration grew. Laura Bennett continued her work as a journalist, traveling from one hotspot to another to document the unfolding crisis. In Geneva, she covered a tense international summit where world leaders argued over how to prioritize the Council's demands. "We can't just shut down our nuclear arsenals overnight," shouted a representative from Russia. "It would leave us vulnerable." A delegate from India countered, "And what about the millions dying because of rising sea levels? Are we supposed to ignore them too?" The room erupted into chaos, with voices overlapping in anger and desperation. While governments debated, ordinary people took matters into their own hands. Grassroots movements sprang up everywhere, demanding action. In Los Angeles, Laura met a group of activists who had started planting trees in abandoned lots and cleaning up polluted rivers. "If the leaders won't do it, we will," said a young woman named Emily, her hands caked with dirt. "Every little bit helps." But not everyone was so optimistic. In Chicago, Laura interviewed a man named Daniel Hayes, a former Marine who now led a small but growing resistance movement. "The Council thinks they can walk all over us," he said, his jaw tight with determination. They don't know who they're dealing with. Meanwhile, Alex Carter and his team of scientists at NASA were making unsettling discoveries. Using data collected from the alien ship's energy signatures, they uncovered patterns that suggested the Council wasn't being entirely honest. Their technology isn't just advanced, it's predatory, Alex explained to Sarah during a late-night discussion. These ships are designed to dominate, not to explore. They're not here to help us. They're here to control us. Sarah frowned, flipping through the notes scattered across their lab table. If you're right, then meeting their demands won't save us. It'll just make us easier targets. Alex knew they needed more evidence, but time was running out. He began reaching out to other experts, sharing his findings in secret. One name kept coming up, a hacker known only as Cipher, rumored to be part of an underground network called the Vanguard. Cipher was said to have access to classified information about alien activity on Earth. Alex hesitated before contacting them. He didn't trust anyone easily, but desperation pushed him forward. Laura also heard whispers about the Vanguard. During a trip to Washington, D.C., she tracked down a source who claimed to know someone involved. After hours of waiting in a dimly lit cafe, she finally met a man named Ryan, who spoke cautiously. "We're not giving up without a fight," he told her. "The Council thinks we're weak, but they've never faced humans before. We adapt. We survive." Laura pressed him for details, but Ryan refused to say more, slipping away into the crowd before she could ask another question. Back home, Alex received a cryptic message from Cipher. "Meet me if you want answers." The note included coordinates to an old warehouse on the outskirts of Houston. Though nervous, Alex decided to go. When he arrived, he found Cipher, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She introduced herself as Rachel Monroe, a former engineer turned rebel leader. "You're right about the Council," she said bluntly. "They've wiped out civilizations like ours before. If we don't stop them, we're next." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He realized then that the Council's ultimatum wasn't a test. It was a trap. Humanity had two choices: surrender or fight. As he left the warehouse, his mind raced with possibilities. The road ahead would be dangerous, but one thing was certain: the Galactic Council had underestimated humanity's resolve, and that mistake might cost them everything. The meeting with Rachel Monroe changed everything for Alex Carter. For the first time, he felt like he had a real chance to fight back against the Galactic Council. Rachel introduced him to the Vanguard, a secretive group of engineers, hackers, pilots, and scientists who were determined to resist the aliens' demands. They operated out of hidden bases scattered across the country, using stolen alien tech and their own ingenuity to prepare for what they knew would be humanity's greatest battle. Alex quickly became an important part of the team. His knowledge of astrophysics and his access to NASA resources made him invaluable. He worked closely with Rachel, who led the group with quiet confidence and sharp intelligence. Together, they began reverse engineering pieces of alien technology that had been salvaged from abandoned outposts. It was slow, painstaking work, but every breakthrough brought them closer to creating weapons capable of matching the Council's advanced ships. Laura Bennett, still covering the story for her news network, started noticing strange patterns. Reports of unexplained explosions at military bases and sudden power outages in remote areas caught her attention. She dug deeper, piecing together clues that pointed to organized resistance efforts. One night, while reviewing footage from a protest in Denver, she spotted someone familiar. Daniel Hayes, the former Marine she'd interviewed weeks earlier. He was standing near the edge of the crowd, talking urgently with a man wearing a black jacket. Laura recognized the man. It was Ryan, the source who had mentioned the Vanguard. Her curiosity grew stronger. Laura decided to track down Daniel again, hoping he might lead her to more answers. After days of searching, she finally found him in a small town in Colorado. When she approached him, Daniel didn't deny his involvement. Instead, he invited her to meet the group behind the resistance. "You've been asking questions," he said. Maybe it's time you saw the truth. Daniel took Laura to one of the Vanguard's hidden bases, a converted warehouse filled with makeshift equipment and busy volunteers. There she met Alex and Rachel, along with dozens of others working tirelessly to prepare for the fight ahead. Laura was stunned by what she saw. Prototype fighters hung from the ceiling, their designs inspired by alien technology. Engineers tested energy weapons powered by reverse-engineered alien cores. Pilots practiced maneuvers in flight simulators designed to mimic the Council's ships. Rachel explained their plan. Build a fleet of advanced fighters, train pilots to use them, and launch a coordinated attack if the Council followed through on its threat. We're not going to sit around waiting for them to destroy us, she said firmly. If they want a war, we'll give them one. Laura couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and fear. These people weren't soldiers or politicians. They were ordinary men and women risking everything to protect their planet. As the weeks passed, the Vanguard grew stronger. Volunteers poured in from all over the country, eager to contribute however they could. Some helped repair equipment. Others worked on logistics or communications. Even children played a role, sorting supplies and delivering messages. Laura stayed close to the group, documenting their efforts. She knew their story needed to be told, even if it meant risking her own safety. Meanwhile, tensions between nations continued to rise. Governments struggled to meet the Council's demands, but progress was painfully slow. Protests turned violent in some cities as people lost hope. The Galactic Council watched silently from orbit, their massive ships casting long shadows over the Earth below. They seemed confident that humanity would fail, unaware of the storm brewing beneath them. Deep inside the warehouse, Alex stared at a screen displaying schematics for a new fighter prototype. They think we're weak, he muttered to Rachel. But they don't know us. We've always found a way to survive. Rachel nodded, her expression grim but resolute. Surviving isn't enough this time, she said. We have to win. For the first time in months, Alex allowed himself to believe they might actually stand a chance. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The Galactic Council had no idea what they were up against, and when the time came, humanity would show them exactly what wrath looked like. The Vanguard's efforts were paying off, but the pressure was mounting. Every day brought new challenges, and the clock continued to tick down toward the Council's deadline. Alex Carter spent long hours in the hidden warehouse, analyzing alien tech and trying to unlock its secrets. Rachel Monroe pushed the team harder than ever, knowing they were running out of time. We need answers, she told Alex one evening as they pored over encrypted data files. If we don't figure out how their weapons work, we're dead. It wasn't just about building fighters anymore. The Vanguard needed to understand the Council's true intentions. Why had they come to Earth? What happened to other civilizations that didn't meet their demands? These questions haunted Alex, and he became obsessed with finding the truth. Using fragments of alien code recovered from abandoned outposts, he began piecing together a disturbing picture. Late one night, after days of relentless work, he finally cracked part of the encryption. What he found shocked him. Buried deep within the files were records of entire planets wiped out by the Galactic Council, not because they failed to meet demands, but simply because they posed a potential threat. Civilizations that showed signs of rapid technological advancement or resistance were systematically destroyed. The Council didn't care about peace or unity. They cared about control. Humanity wasn't being judged. It was being targeted. Alex shared his discovery with Rachel and Daniel Hayes immediately. They gathered the core members of the Vanguard in a dimly lit corner of the warehouse, away from prying eyes. This isn't an ultimatum, Alex said, his voice low but urgent. It's a setup. The Council doesn't want us to succeed. They're using this as an excuse to destroy us before we become too powerful. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Rachel broke the silence first. Then we have no choice, she said firmly. We fight, not just to survive, but to send a message. Humanity won't be erased without a fight. The others nodded, determination replacing fear in their eyes. From that moment on, the Vanguard shifted its focus. Building weapons and training pilots was still important, but now there was a new priority: gathering intelligence on the Council's operations. Laura Bennett noticed the change in the group's energy during her visits. People moved with purpose, their faces set with grim resolve. She asked Alex what had happened, but he only gave her a vague answer. "We know more now," he said, "and it's made things clearer." Laura pressed him for details, but Alex refused to say more. He trusted her, but some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with someone as dedicated as Laura. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council began taking notice of the Vanguard's activities. Their surveillance systems detected unusual energy readings coming from remote locations on Earth. At first, they dismissed them as anomalies, but when reports of stolen alien tech reached their leaders, they grew suspicious. A small fleet of scout ships was dispatched to investigate. One cold morning, disaster struck. The Vanguard's largest base, a sprawling complex hidden in the mountains of Montana, was attacked. The aliens arrived without warning, their ships unleashing devastating beams of energy that tore through the facility. Chaos erupted as volunteers scrambled to evacuate. Some stayed behind to buy time, holding off the attackers with prototype weapons. Among them was Daniel, who led a desperate counterattack despite overwhelming odds. When the dust settled, the base was in ruins. Dozens of people were missing or injured, and critical supplies had been destroyed. But the Vanguard wasn't defeated. Survivors regrouped at a secondary location, carrying with them the lessons learned from the attack. "They underestimated us once," Rachel said during a somber meeting. "They'll do it again. And next time, we'll be ready." For Alex, the loss hit hard, but it also fueled his determination. The Council had shown its hand, revealing its brutality and arrogance. Humanity might have been outnumbered and outgunned, but it had something the aliens lacked: heart. As he looked around the room at the weary but unbroken faces of his comrades, Alex felt a spark of hope. The Galactic Council had miscalculated, and soon they would pay for it. The attack on the Montana base was a wake-up call for the Vanguard. It proved that the Galactic Council wasn't just watching. They were actively hunting. Rachel Monroe knew they couldn't afford another mistake. "We need to adapt," she told the group during a tense meeting in their new hideout, a converted factory hidden deep in the desert. "If we're going to survive, we have to think like them, but fight like us." Building better weapons became the top priority. Alex Carter worked closely with a young engineer named Mia Collins, who had joined the Vanguard after losing her family in the Montana attack. Together, they refined the prototypes inspired by alien tech. Using salvaged energy cores and reverse-engineered designs, they created sleek fighters capable of matching the Council's speed and firepower. Each ship was equipped with experimental plasma cannons and shielding systems designed to withstand alien attacks. Training intensified as well. Daniel Hayes led the pilots through grueling simulations, pushing them to their limits. Many of the recruits had never flown anything before, let alone a spacecraft, but desperation made them quick learners. "This isn't about being perfect," Daniel told them one evening after a particularly rough session. "It's about staying alive long enough to hit back." His words resonated with the team, and slowly they began to improve. Laura Bennett stayed close to the group, documenting every step of their journey. She watched as volunteers worked around the clock, repairing damaged equipment, testing new technology, and preparing for battle. Despite the danger, there was a sense of unity among them. People shared meals, swapped stories, and supported each other through exhaustion and grief. Laura found herself drawn into their world, not just as a journalist, but as part of the team. One breakthrough came when Mia discovered a flaw in the Council's ships. While their vessels were powerful, they relied heavily on centralized command systems to coordinate attacks. If those systems could be disrupted, even temporarily, it would leave the ships vulnerable. Alex immediately began working on a plan to exploit this weakness. He designed a device, a small portable EMP generator that could disable the Council's communication networks. It was risky, untested, and required precise timing, but it was their best chance. As the weeks passed, the vanguard grew bolder. Small teams conducted raids on alien outposts, stealing supplies and gathering intelligence. These missions were dangerous, and not everyone returned, but they provided valuable information. During one raid, Alex and Daniel uncovered blueprints for the Council's central command ship, a massive vessel orbiting Earth. It was from this ship that the aliens coordinated their operations, and it was also their greatest vulnerability. Rachel called a meeting to discuss their next move. "We can't keep running," she said, pacing in front of the group. "We need to take the fight to them. If we can infiltrate their command ship and disable its systems, we'll cripple their entire fleet." The room fell silent as everyone processed her words. It was a suicide mission. But no one argued. They all knew what was at stake. Preparations began immediately. Pilots drilled tirelessly, practicing formations and attack patterns. Engineers fine-tuned the fighters, adding extra armor and upgrading weapons. Alex finalized the EMP device, ensuring it would work under pressure. Laura documented everything, knowing that if they failed, their story needed to survive. On the eve of the mission, the group gathered for a quiet meal. There were no speeches, no grand declarations, just shared glances and unspoken promises. Alex sat beside Rachel, staring at the stars outside the window. "Do you think we can do this?" he asked softly. Rachel didn't answer right away. Finally, she nodded. "We don't have a choice," she said. "But I believe in us. In humanity." The next morning, the fighters were loaded onto transport vehicles and driven to a remote launch site. As dawn broke over the horizon, the pilots climbed into their cockpits, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity once. Now, it was time to show them exactly what wrath looked like. The launch was tense and quiet, the desert air heavy with anticipation. One by one, the sleek fighters roared to life, their engines humming with energy borrowed from alien technology. Alex Carter stood at the edge of the makeshift runway, his heart pounding as he watched the pilots climb into their ships. Each face was a mix of fear and determination, their eyes locked on the horizon where the Council's massive command ship loomed like a shadow over Earth. Rachel Monroe gave the final order through her headset. "Remember the plan," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Stick together, hit hard, and don't stop until the EMP is in place." The pilots acknowledged her instructions, their voices crackling over the radio. As the first fighter lifted off the ground, Alex felt a lump rise in his throat. He had spent months pouring everything he knew into this mission, and now it was out of his hands. The fleet soared into the sky, disappearing into the clouds as they approached the orbiting command ship. From below, Laura Bennett watched the streaks of light fade into the distance. She held her camera tightly, filming the scene even though there was little to capture. Her mind raced with questions. Would they make it? Could they really pull this off? For the first time since joining the vanguard, she felt truly afraid, not just for herself, but for everyone who had risked so much. Above the atmosphere, the battle began. The Council's ships detected the incoming fighters almost immediately, swarming around them like insects defending their hive. Plasma beams lit up the darkness as both sides exchanged fire. Daniel Hayes led the charge, weaving his fighter through the chaos with practiced skill. "Stay close," he shouted into the comms. "We can't afford to scatter." The human pilots fought with everything they had, using every trick they'd learned during training. Their smaller, more agile ships darted between the larger alien vessels, dodging attacks and striking back when they could. But the odds were against them. One by one, some of the fighters fell, their explosions bright against the void of space. Each loss sent a wave of grief through the remaining pilots, but they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower. Alex's EMP device was housed inside Daniel's fighter, its activation tied to the success of the mission. As the team fought their way closer to the command ship, Rachel coordinated their movements from the ground. "You're almost there," she said, her voice strained but calm. "Keep pushing." Finally, Daniel reached the hull of the command ship. With precise maneuvers, he guided his fighter toward an exposed docking bay, slipping inside before the Council's defenses could seal it off. The other pilots formed a protective ring around him, drawing enemy fire away from the vulnerable entry point. Inside the ship, Daniel ejected from his cockpit, clutching the EMP device. He moved quickly, navigating the labyrinthine corridors while avoiding patrols of alien soldiers. Back on Earth, Alex and Rachel monitored the situation anxiously. "He's in," Alex whispered, staring at the live feed from Daniel's helmet camera. Every second felt like an eternity. Then finally, Daniel reached the central control room. He placed the EMP device on the main console and activated it. A burst of electromagnetic energy surged through the ship, disabling its systems instantly. Outside, the Council's fleet faltered, their coordination shattered. For a brief moment, silence reigned. Then, cheers erupted from the remaining fighters as they realized what had happened. Against all odds, humanity had struck a blow that would echo across the stars. The Galactic Council wasn't invincible. They had been humbled by a species they thought unworthy. But the victory came at a cost. Several pilots didn't return, their sacrifices etched into the hearts of those who survived. As the fighters limped back toward Earth, Alex stared at the screen showing the disabled command ship. They had proven humanity's strength, but the war was far from over. The disabled command ship drifted silently in orbit, its once imposing presence now a symbol of humanity's defiance. Back on Earth, the Vanguard celebrated their victory, but the mood was bittersweet. Pilots who had returned from the battle were greeted as heroes, yet their faces were somber, haunted by the friends they'd lost. Alex Carter stood among them, his mind replaying the mission over and over. They had crippled the Council's fleet, but he knew this was only the beginning. Rachel Monroe called an emergency meeting at the desert hideout. "We hit them hard," she said, addressing the weary group, "but they're not gone. Not yet." She pointed to a map projected on the wall, showing the remaining alien ships scattered across Earth's atmosphere. Though disorganized, they still outnumbered humanity's forces. "If we don't finish this now, they'll regroup, and next time, they won't hold back." Daniel Hayes stepped forward, his voice firm despite the exhaustion etched into his face. "Then we go all in," he said. "We take out every last one of their ships before they can recover." The room buzzed with nervous energy. It was a bold plan, maybe too bold, but no one argued. They all knew there was no turning back. Preparations began immediately. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged fighters and refit them with upgraded weapons. Alex collaborated with Mia Collins to improve the plasma cannons, making them more efficient and deadly. Supplies were stretched thin, but volunteers poured in from across the country, offering whatever help they could. Even Laura Bennett pitched in, helping organize logistics and document the effort for future generations. As the days passed, tension mounted. The Galactic Council hadn't responded to the attack on their command ship, which worried Rachel. "They're planning something," she told Alex late one night as they reviewed intel gathered from surviving alien tech. "We need to strike before they do." Her instincts proved right when scouts reported unusual activity near the moon. A new wave of Council reinforcements was approaching. Time was running out. Rachel made the call to launch a final assault. "This is it," she said during a briefing. "Every ship we have will join the fight. No holding back. If we lose, Earth is done for." The pilots nodded grimly, strapping into their fighters without hesitation. Daniel led the charge once again, his fighter painted with makeshift symbols honoring those who had fallen. The battle that followed was chaos. Human ships clashed with the alien fleet in a dazzling display of light and destruction. Plasma beams streaked through space, explosions lit up the darkness, and debris floated like ghostly reminders of the cost of war. The humans fought with everything they had, their smaller numbers offset by sheer determination and clever tactics. Using the EMP device as inspiration, Alex had developed portable disruptors that temporarily disabled enemy ships, giving the fighters openings to strike. Inside the cockpit of her fighter, Mia locked onto a massive alien cruiser. With steady hands, she fired a barrage of plasma shots, targeting its engines. The ship shuddered and exploded, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Cheers erupted over the comms, but there was no time to celebrate. More ships loomed ahead, their weapons charging. Daniel spotted the lead alien vessel, a towering behemoth surrounded by escorts, and set his sights on it. "Cover me," he shouted, diving toward the target. Enemy fire rained down, but the other pilots formed a protective barrier, taking hits meant for him. With gritted teeth, Daniel unleashed a concentrated volley of plasma, piercing the behemoth's hull. It erupted in a blinding flash, its destruction sending a ripple effect through the alien fleet. One by one, the Council's ships fell. The tide turned as humanity pressed its advantage, refusing to let up. When the last alien vessel exploded, silence filled the void. Exhausted but victorious, the human pilots regrouped, their battered ships limping back toward Earth. Below, Rachel watched the sky, tears streaming down her face. Against impossible odds, humanity had prevailed. But as Alex joined her, staring at the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the first chapter in a much larger story.